Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm rocking a little bit of a bum chic is what I'm gonna call this situation right here. It's that time of the month. It's like day number 1, which is, I don't know about you guys, but like the worst day. I feel like my insides are trying to kill me. Is that TMI? Maybe? I don't know. I'm gonna go with probably not because according to Google Analytics, 99% of my audience is female. Anyway, today's video is going to be super nerdy and super chatty. It's something that I've thought about doing for quite a while, but I finally most recently took the time to like actually sit down and do all the research and like put everything together. So I actually started out in this whole beauty world as a blogger, and actually come to think of it, my 6-year blogoversary I believe was June 13th, so it just recently passed. So when I write eyeshadow palette reviews, one of the things I always like to do is talk about the total net weight of the palette, the cost per gram, and then compare it to some other similarly priced palettes so you can see whether or not it's actually like a good value or a not so great value. And you know, over the years of doing this, you start to notice some trends, you start to see some interesting things, and I always thought it would be kind of a fun video to do, but again, I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. Now, I'm kind of a nerd. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I play Magic the Gathering. I really like math, so I made an Excel spreadsheet that included every eyeshadow palette in my collection, along with a whole bunch of other really popular palettes or palettes I've owned in the past and have decluttered that I think are very popular. And in that spreadsheet, I put the price of every palette and how many grams it had and had to do some calculations for me so I could see the comparative cost per gram for all of these different palettes and kind of sort them and resort them in different ways so I could see how they sized up against one another. There are a total of 57 eyeshadow palettes in my little list. I'm not going to necessarily talk about every single one of them, because then we'd be here for probably an hour. But I'm going to overview some really interesting things that I found out when I put this list together. Now, here's the thing when it comes to value, especially when we're talking about eyeshadow palettes. There are so many things that factor into whether or not something is actually worth purchasing. You're looking at the color story, are there things they're going to actually use, the formulas, the packaging, and then also how much product are you getting? Is it something you're gonna blow through in 2 seconds or something that's gonna last you a really long time? So while the focus of this video is gonna be more on like how much makeup are you getting for your money, I'm also going to talk about formulas and talk about my experiences with some of these brands, with some of these palettes, because I do see that there is a difference in quality. So obviously I don't mind paying more per gram for a formula that's really, really good versus one that I kind of have to work with a little bit more. But it is interesting when you stop looking at just the actual palette costs, because we often kind of use that as a way to denote like what's high-end versus what's drugstore, is like how expensive something is. When we stop looking at that and we just look at like the price per gram, it gets very, very interesting, and palettes start to like mesh together in a very different way. So hopefully you guys will find this interesting, find it enlightening or helpful in some way. So with all that being said, let's get into what I actually found out. Alright, so on my list of 57 eyeshadow palettes, the most expensive eyeshadow palette that I included was the Natasha Denona like original 15 pan palettes. So those retail for $129, and I only included it once because the price per gram and everything is exactly the same for all of these palettes, but you know, this would be the gold palette, the lila palette, the sunset palette, etc. And the most affordable palette in my list is this guy right here, the Wet n Wild Color Icon 10 pan palette. This guy retails for $4.99. The average price of all of the palettes that I included was $32.15. So that to me is kind of more like on the low end of high-end products as far as eyeshadow palettes go. I feel like most high-end palettes retail between $40 and $60. Your drugstore palettes are usually more like anywhere from $5 to $20. So it kind of makes sense that we would find something kind of right in the middle there for the average. And then the average price per gram for all these palettes was $2.13. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through these, where all these other palettes fall, if they are more expensive than the average or less. Now the palette with the absolute worst value in my entire collection is this guy right here, the Jouer Skinny Dip palette, which actually I'm pretty sure has been discontinued. You might still be able to get this in a few places, but I don't think Jouer is planning on making this anymore. And this guy works out to be $5.33 per gram, which is kind of crazy, especially considering that Jouer is nice, but it's not like an uber luxury brand. Really, the reason is that this palette normally retailed for $40, which is kind of insane for 6 eyeshadows. I got this at a Generation Beauty event that I went to, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, so I didn't pay full price for it, but I do think it's kind of insane that they were charging that much for this number of eyeshadows. I mean, the formula on these is absolutely beautiful. I love it. They're super, super foiled and shimmery. Like, the reason I got this was that at the time, there wasn't really anything quite like this on the market. But like, I understand why Jouer probably decided to pull this and start launching some other things, because it's a lot. Not to mention the fact that this guy is huge. Like, for just 6 shadows, this looks like the same size as a LORAC Pro palette. So, I don't know. I feel like there were definitely some good things formula-wise, but there was a lot of other stuff they probably could have improved on. The next most expensive palette that's on my list is the LORAC Pro Palette. And actually, the same thing goes for the LORAC Pro 2 and the LORAC Pro 3. They have the exact same number of shades, exact same total net weight, and the same price. So those palettes all end up being $4.89 a gram, which is really expensive, like really, really up there for an eyeshadow palette. And I actually don't own any of the LORAC Pro palettes anymore. I used to have the Pro 3. I used that one for a while, but then I ended up decluttering it because I just ended up finding other neutral palettes that I liked more. But one of the things I've noticed about LORAC palettes is that the shadows are very soft. There's a lot of kick up in the pan, and you do very frequently see people pan or hit pan on shades in their LORAC Pro palettes. And this makes sense because as far as how much product you're actually getting in each shade, it's pretty teeny tiny. And then not quite as bad, but also pretty up there, is Anastasia Beverly Hills. So I have the Soft Glam palette, and Soft Glam, Modern Renaissance, Norvina, I'm pretty sure basically every palette that's in this format has the same net weight or a very similar net weight. Maybe some of the foil shades might be a slightly different weight than the mattes, but for the most part, these palettes from ABH retail for $4.05 per gram. So again, really up there. ABH also kind of has a similar problem to LORAC, where the shadows are very, very soft. There's usually a lot of kick up, especially in the mattes. So I feel like it's really easy to hit pan on these palettes if you use them very often. And then the next one, which surprised me, was the Nabla Secret palette. So this guy has 15 shades, and the price per gram of this ends up working out to $3.41 per gram. Now, that is not like 100% accurate because Nabla does not have this palette listed in US dollars on its website. It only sells it in euros. So depending on what the conversion rate is, the amount in US dollars is not consistent, but we're gonna say it's around-ish $3.40 a gram, which is still significantly less than the LORAC Pro palette, but still a lot more than many other high-end brands. And here's the thing that's extra interesting about these palettes. They all retail in like the low $40 price point, which definitely is appealing to many people because $40 feels just a little bit less hard to swallow than spending $50, $60, $100 on an eyeshadow palette. So for a lot of people, these seem more accessible than even like the Urban Decay Naked palettes, which we're gonna get to those. But just know that you are getting significantly less product in these palettes than you are many of these other ones. And if you're someone like me that has, a bajillion eyeshadow palettes and that's very light-handed with their eyeshadows, it may not be a big deal to you. You may prefer to spend less money up front, even though you're getting less product. But if you're the kind of person that goes ham on their eyeshadows, or you pretty much just use like the same palettes over and over and over again, you don't have a big collection, just know that if you invest in palettes like these, you're gonna burn through them a lot faster because there's just not very much product in each pan. And I find actually all three, the LORAC, the ABH, and the Nabla, they all do have very soft eyeshadow formulas. It's what makes them so amazing, but also, again, just easier to burn through. Now, while we're on the topic of more expensive palettes, let's talk about the new Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. So this palette retails for $65. It has 15 shades, and that works out to a cost of $3.38 per gram. Now, when you think about the fact that the LORAC Pro palette is like almost $5 per gram, that makes Natasha Denona not look so bad, especially because we consider Natasha Denona to be like a luxury brand, super high-end, very high quality. So even in this new smaller 15 pan palette, you're getting a lot of product. And what I found that was even more interesting, the other 15 pan palettes, the bigger ones that are $129, like the gold palette, actually cost more per gram, which is really weird. They work out to $3.44 per gram, which is just a few pennies more, but it is interesting because usually palettes that are bigger end up having a better price per gram ratio. Usually we pay more for anything in like smaller mini size. So I'll be curious to see if Natasha Denona keeps releasing more of these lower priced 15 pan palettes because they seem to be like the best deal that she offers. And then this next one was also really surprising because yet again, the smaller, more condensed palette ends up being a better value than the big guy. And that's Huda Beauty. So I have the new Nude palette. This guy here has, I believe, 18 shades in it. And I think it retails for $65. The price per gram on this palette is $3.30 per gram. So kind of right up there with Natasha Denona, not that much less expensive. But if you buy one of her Obsessions palettes, which I used to have the Mauve Obsessions, but again, I decluttered it. It has a happy new home. Those palettes are exactly half the size of one of these guys. They have 9 shades. They retail for $27. And the price per gram of the Obsessions palettes works out to $2.31 per gram, which is crazy. So honestly, you are probably better off buying 2 Obsessions palettes in a color story that you like than buying any one of her individual full-size palettes because you're getting the same, if not more, eyeshadow for less money. Now, in my collection, the best palette value-wise from a high-end brand, hands down, is this guy right here. This is the Violet Voss Pro Holy Grail or HG palette. So this is what this looks like on the inside. It's a warm, neutral palette. It retails for $45. You get 20 shades in here. But what is so crazy about this is it contains 32 grams of product. That is a lot of eyeshadow. So each one of these pans, even though like I think they're decently sized, they don't look super massive though. I think that they're deep more so than they are wide, which again is another reason why you have to look at the numbers and not just inspect things visually. A pan can look pretty big or pretty small, but unless you look at how much product is actually in it, it can actually end up being a little bit deceiving. So the cost per gram of this palette is $1.41. So that is crazy. There are drugstore palettes, which we will also get into in a little bit, that are way more expensive than this when you look at it from that perspective. So if you are someone that loves these tones and just is like, I want one palette that's gonna last me a long time, that's gonna be a really good investment, I mean, this is a solid way to go. You're getting such a good bang for your buck. The quality of these shadows is also really nice. I don't know if I would say it's quite as luxurious feeling as something like ABH or Nabla, but as far as blendability, the way things look on the eyes, like I think this is a really easy palette to work with. I think it's very beginner friendly. So definitely a really solid option to invest in for just like the average everyday person. Now, as far as how some popular palettes fall in line, I've got like the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette here. This guy's kind of like right in the middle at $2.87 a gram. You've got a whole bunch of cool shades in this guy. Oh, Smells delicious. The Urban Decay Born to Run palette works out to $2.92 a gram. Also not too bad, because that's a pretty big palette with a lot of shades. And it actually also works out to a better value than any of the Naked palettes, which we're getting into next. So 12-pan palettes are apparently probably like the most popular format / size of eyeshadow palettes, I'm coming to realize. 19 of the palettes on my list had 12 pans, and I am sure that is far from like all of the 12-pan palettes that exist. So I figured those would be good to look at next to each other, because with all these palettes, you're getting the same number of shades, so you can't make that argument. So it's purely just a formula and amount of product that's making the difference for how much money you're spending. Then next is the Urban Decay like Naked Heat palette and the Naked 2 and the Naked 3. These guys retail for $54, so they're pretty up there, and with the amount of product that they have, they end up working out to $3.46 per gram. So that's pretty pricey. I mean, you're actually paying more per gram for those Urban Decay palettes than you are for Natasha Denona, so that's a little interesting. Yes, you're spending less money up front by almost $10, but you're apparently getting a lot less. What's interesting though is that the new Naked Reloaded palette, which is less expensive, it's only $44, is also a much better value. That one works out to $3.10 a gram. So 35 cents per gram, when you would think the formulas would be like pretty comparable. Another one that's pretty up there price point wise, again, not a shocker, is the Nabla Soul Blooming palette. This one works out to $3.45 per gram, because again, these pans are not super large. I absolutely love the quality of Nabla eyeshadows. Again, I think they're fantastic, but they definitely are perhaps like a tiny bit overpriced. The next one was also super interesting because this palette itself is not that expensive, but its price per gram amount is kind of high. And that's this little guy here, the Meat Matchmaker palette from The Balm. So this is separated into like little duos, and there are 6 of them, and as you can see, like each individual pan is really pretty tiny. It honestly is like the size of a sample eyeshadow if you were getting like, you know, an Ipsy bag or something like that. So I feel like when you look at the amount of packaging and how much like wasted space there is in here, you'll realize like you're really not paying for a lot of product. So yes, this palette's only around $20, but the price per gram ends up being $3.07, which is kind of up there. Then you've got like the Pure Festival palette. This works out to $2.32 per gram, so pretty decently sized pans. These remind me of like the same size as a ColourPop single shadow. So yeah, I know that Pure's quality of eyeshadow is kind of contested. Some people really don't like it. Some people think it's pretty good. I thought this palette performed actually pretty well. It maybe is a little overpriced for the quality of the shadows. I feel like this one reminds me a little bit more of the Beauty Crop Gazing palettes, which I will show you guys momentarily, and those are a lot less per gram. So I would probably see this brought down to more like $2 per gram. I think whatever that would work out to be would make this a better price, but I don't think it's a bad palette. You guys know how much I love my Persona Identity palette. This guy here is $2.22 per gram, which actually works out to the exact same value as the Pretty Vulgar Nightingale palette. This guy's also $2.22 per gram. To be honest, I 100% prefer the Persona palette over this guy. I don't think this is a bad palette, but the shades in here are pretty inconsistent as far as the formula goes. Some of them are patchy, some of them are really nicely pigmented, so it's kind of hit or miss, whereas I feel like the Persona palette, like every shade in here is absolutely beautiful, performs super nicely. So if you were looking for something neutral in this price range, I definitely would go with a Persona. Then this one, again, really surprised me. All of the Tartelette palettes are only $2.17 per gram. That is such a good value. I have never actually owned any of the Tartelette palettes. I know that so many people love them. I have previously owned the Tarte Pro palette, which does have a similar formula, but it's not the same. Tarte shadows in general are a little bit stiffer. They're a little bit more hardly pressed. So I feel like they go on at first a little bit less pigmented, but they're buildable. You can work them up to full intensity. You just kind of have to layer them. So they're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But again, if you are someone that wants just like a one and done everyday eyeshadow palette that you're going to be able to get a lot of use out of, you may want to look into the Tartelette palettes, because apparently There's a lot of product in there. Now, up to this point, we've pretty much just been talking about high-end palettes, but I want to move into something from the drugstore. These guys from Milani, you've heard me rave about a bunch before on my channel, the Bold Obsessions and the Most Loved Mattes palettes. These guys retail for $20 a piece, and again, they are 12 pan palettes, and these guys break down to a cost of $1.67 per gram. So I feel like as far as like how much you're getting in here, it's not an insane amount of product, but it's reasonable for the amount of money that you're spending and for the quality of the formulas. Also, you can get these guys at Walmart for $15 a piece instead of paying the full price, and that brings the cost per gram down to $1.25, which I think is pretty amazing. So if you've been curious about these Milani palettes, they also do have some other color varieties available. I think they're really great. Another amazing palette for the price, the ColourPop Sweet Talk palette. I've been mildly obsessed with this. And now this is a more expensive palette for ColourPop, especially in the 12 pan variety. Most of the other ones are $16. This one is $18, I think because of the addition of the pressed glitters and the Super Shock Shadow. So this guy works out to $1.59 per gram. So again, this is another one of those situations where you're not getting like a ton of product in here. It's 11.35 grams net weight, but the price is really good. So that's what keeps the price per gram ratio really reasonable. If you were to get one of the other 12 pan palettes from ColourPop, this is the Element of Surprise. They don't make it anymore, which is such a shame because this is a great palette. But this guy actually has a little bit more product. It has 12.6 grams and it's less expensive, which works out to $1.27 per gram. So definitely a much better value, but you're just not getting quite as many really cool formulas as you are in this one. Now, these guys are more expensive, but a better value. They are the Pixi Eye Reflections palettes. These guys retail for $24 a piece, so a little bit more up there. You can find them at Target, so they're kind of like drugstore-ish. But each of these palettes has 16.5 grams of product, which is a lot more than the ColourPop, so they work out to $1.47 per gram. I love the quality of Pixi eyeshadows. I think they're fantastic. Again, a very like buildable matte formula, not super pigmented, but you can layer it up. And the metallic shades, they're like, oh, just super shiny and reflective and beautiful. And then as I mentioned before when we were talking about the Pure Festival palette, these gazing palettes from the Beauty Crop are such an insane value and they're really, really underrated. These guys retail for $24.50 a piece, so they're not like super cheap, but you get 19.2 grams of product in each palette, which is a lot. And again, the pans in here don't look like insanely large. I think they're just deceptively deep. So the actual price per gram of these palettes works out to $1.28, which is bananas. And these palettes do have those like really cool pressed glitters in them. So if you don't mind spending like a little bit more than you would on ColourPop, you actually get a lot more product in these palettes, and they have similar kind of vibes. Also, does this one not remind you of the Naked Cherry palette? This is the Dawn Gazing version, and it has those exact same like warm berry tones for like half the price. Then I want to move on to talking about mini palettes, like little bite-sized, travel-friendly palettes, things that have less than 10 shades in them. And usually the appeal of these palettes is that they let you try a higher-end formula for a lot less money because we know there's less product in there. Maybe we don't need all those shades. Maybe we want something that's a little bit more compact and travel friendly. But usually we expect the like price per gram amount to be higher than like the full-size counterpart. However, as we found out with the Huda Beauty, that's not always necessarily true. Now, the absolute worst value for a little palette that I've found out there are the Smashbox Cover Shot palettes. Those ones end up working out to cost $3.82 per gram of product. Anyway, I've never really heard super great things about the Cover Shot palettes. It seems like depending on the one you are using, the quality varies from palette to palette. So let us know in the comments down below if you've tried the Cover Shot palettes and if you like them and like which one is your favorite. Now, this one doesn't exactly feel like super miniature size-wise, but it only has 8 shades, so I'm gonna like wrap it into this section. And that's the Alamar Cosmetics Reina del Caribe palette, volume 1. This is such a gorgeous palette. The quality of these shadows is seriously amazing. And when it comes to value, this guy is sort of like middle of the road all the way. It's a $28 palette, so it's not like crazy up there price point wise. And as far as how much product you're getting, it's 11.2 grams. So like not bad, but not fantastic. It works out to a cost per gram of $2.50, so very average in my opinion. But honestly though, the shadows are like not average. They're great. These mattes are so insanely pigmented, and these metallics, dude, they're brilliant. So I definitely enjoy this palette. Also, it's an indie brand, and I feel like in general, I'm a little more forgiving of indie brands having a slightly higher price point just because they don't have like the buying power of big brands. They can't order like tons and tons of stock and get as much discount in their manufacturing processes. So like, I get it, and I feel like they're delivering a really amazing formula with this. Then this little guy, honestly, I feel like is such a dark horse palette. I hear nobody talking about it, but it is a really great palette and a really good value. So this is the Ciate London Astrolights palette in the jeweled version. And this guy is a little 9-pan palette. It's again, super sleek and travel friendly. The outside packaging is absolutely adorable. It's got those very popular sort of warm berry tones with some hints of iridescent purple. And this guy retails for $35, which seems like a lot of money, especially to spend on only 9 shades. But you're getting 16 grams of product in here. So like significantly more even than this guy, even though it's like obviously a fraction of the size. So this works out to a value of $2.19 per gram, which I think is excellent, especially for a high-end brand with a really nice formula. So if you saw this and you were looking at it and you were like, wow, that looks really tiny, I don't know, is it really worth it? You're actually getting a lot in here. Each of these pans is pretty deep. The packaging is super nice quality. You've got a mirror. So I feel like this is totally worth the price if you think you're actually gonna like get use out of the shades. Then as far as the like most affordable 9-pan palettes out there, of course we have ColourPop and Juvia's Place. Now, I don't actually own any of the ColourPop 9-pan palettes, but obviously I've tried their formula a bunch before and I have a ton of their singles, so I know the quality of them is great. Those guys retail for $12 a piece and have 9 grams of product in them, so they end up working out to $1.33 per gram, so less than like the Sweet Talk palette, but a little bit more than the other 12-pan palettes. So I think they're still a decent value. Like if you were trying to think, is it better to spend a little bit more and get the 12-pan palette versus getting one of the 9-pan ones? You're not like overpaying grossly one way or the other. It's pretty comparable. It's gonna really come down to which one has the color story you like more. But then with the Juvia's Place 9-pan palettes, I found something very interesting. Now, I have the Deuce palette, which was one of their first 9-pan palettes that they released. These pans are freaking massive. This palette retails for $20 and contains 32.3 grams of product. That is bananas. The price per gram works out to 62 cents. 62 cents. And this formula, if you haven't heard, is great. I haven't really heard much in the way of bad feedback on Juvia's Place, and it's because they're very pigmented, very true to color, they look really amazing on the eyes. So like paying 62 cents a gram for their eyeshadows, it's a steal. What I noticed is that their newer 9-pan palettes, like the Tribe and the Warrior 2, they have the same price, they're $20, they still have 9 shades, but the number of grams has been reduced to 17.9. Now honestly, I would never go through this much eyeshadow, so it might not matter to you, but just know that you are getting less value with the newer 9-pan palettes. They are $1.12 per gram, whereas again, this one is 60 cents per gram. And now we're starting to venture into the drugstore range where things start to get very, very affordable. And this is where I feel like we also start to notice some inconsistencies in quality. There are definitely some really affordable palettes that are really amazing, and then there are others that are kind of like a little patchy, a little chalky, a little difficult to work with. So this is one of those places where value is about more than just how much you're paying for the physical quantity of eyeshadow, but also like the quality of the eyeshadow that you're getting. So why don't we start at the very like cheapest of the cheap. We got 2 $5 eyeshadow palettes right here. The Wet n Wild Color Icon 10-pan palette, and this is the Profusion Spectrum palette, but they have a bunch of other palettes just like this in the same 10-pan format. Now, as you can obviously see, Profusion has quite a bit more product than Wet n Wild does. We're looking at 10 grams of product here and 16 grams of product here. So actually not quite as much more as you would think. Like this looks double the size of this, but it's not actually twice as much much product. Still, you're looking at a cost difference of this is 31 cents per gram, this is 50 cents per gram. And also, just for a little bit of comparison, the e.l.f. 10 pan palettes like Mad for Matte, those guys are $10 and those work out to 72 cents per gram, so they are a little bit more expensive, and I haven't tried them, so I don't know what the quality is like, but I've heard mixed things. Some people really like them, some people say they're okay, but maybe it is worth spending a little bit more if the quality is a little bit better. And then you have Flower Beauty, which is also a drugstore brand, and their 10 pan palette is $16.99, which is kind of a lot of money, and when you look at how much product is actually in it, the cost per gram is $2, which, as we have now learned, is actually pretty similar to like some high-end brands. Like Tarte's palettes work out to $2.17 per gram. So I feel like Flower Beauty priced their palette a little high. Like it works out to more than the Milani, more than ColourPop, certainly more than Juvia's Place, or even more than Pixie. So just be aware that even though it is a less expensive palette than some of these other options, you're really not getting a great value. Maybe if you're able to get it on sale, use a coupon, etc., it would be more worth it. I just think at the full price, it seems like it's kind of more up there than it's worth. On that note, I feel like there are a few other drugstore brands / products that are guilty of this, where like the actual price of the palette seems pretty good, but you're getting like nothing in it, so the price per gram is pretty high. For example, Maybelline has those little City Mini palettes, which again, very inconsistent. Some of them have been really good, others have been not so great at all. Those have a price per gram of $2.50. So if you're thinking you're getting a really good deal by getting one of those palettes for only $10, just know you could spend $2 more and get a ColourPop palette with a lot more in it. Also, like CoverGirl's new True Naked palettes, those retail for $13.49, which I was very surprised about. I keep thinking of CoverGirl as being a more affordable drugstore brand, but that seems kind of up there for them. And those palettes are not particularly large, so their price per gram amount works out to $2.08. Again, up there for drugstore. When you're looking at other things in that same price point quality-wise, I feel like you might be better off investing a little bit more in a nicer palette. And then finally, let's talk about some like big beefy palettes, like this one from Makeup Revolution, the Jaclyn Hill palette. I have my LA Girl Hot Hot Heat palette, or the Profusion Metallics. I got some palettes from Carity. The appeal of all of these guys is that you're getting tons of options for your money, and none of these palettes are insanely expensive. The Jaclyn Hill one is the most at $38, which is one of the most expensive palettes that Morphe offers. So of my little stack here, this guy actually is the worst value. I mean, it's still a great value, but the price per gram is the highest. This is the Makeup Revolution, the Wants palette that was made in collaboration with Emily Noel. A great little everyday palette that has some fun pops of color. This is a $20 palette with 24 shades, and the price per gram is 98 cents, which is still really good. I mean, don't get me wrong, but for Makeup Revolution, which is a very, very affordable brand where you're looking at a lot of their products having a price per gram of under 50 cents, this is kind of more expensive, and I'm sure a lot of that is because it was a collab, and I love Emily, was 100% happy to support her, so I don't think this is a bad palette or a bad deal at all. You just are paying a little bit more per gram of product that's in here. Part of it, I'm sure, is also that this guy has a giant mirror in it and really nice packaging. That definitely can bump the price up a bit. The Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette is next at 68 cents per gram. This is the biggest palette that I own. It has 35 shades, and Morphe is known for making these big honkin' things. A lot of their 35 pan palettes are a lot less expensive than this. So if you're purely looking for just like tons and tons and tons of options, I mean, the Morphe 35 pan palettes definitely will deliver them to you. I'm not in love with Morphe or the quality of their products. I think that they get a lot more hype than they deserve. This palette was really great, I can't deny it. I've used it a whole bunch, but I haven't really been enticed to buy anything else from the brand. I personally have been more of a fan of Carity for a very similar style of eyeshadow at a similar price point. These are two of their 21 pan palettes, which retail for $29, and these guys work out to 60 cents per gram. This is the Picante palette, which is super fun for the fall, and then I also have their Mattes palette, which is colorful and totally matte, as the name would suggest. I just feel like the quality of Carity eyeshadows is really nice, especially for the price. Yes, $29 is a lot of money to spend on an eyeshadow palette when you're thinking in the mindset of something drugstore, but you have to remember, you're getting a lot of product and a lot of shades in here. And then finally, the very last product I got is this guy right here from Profusion. This is their Metallics palette. This thing is beastly. It has 24 shades in it, and it retails for $10. This is crazy, and honestly, I really want to get my hands on some of Profusion's other 10-pan palettes because I've heard really great things. The quality is supposed to be really decent, and like the value, I mean, you can't beat it. This guy is 32 cents per gram. And that is everything. Oh my goodness, this video is probably gonna be super, super long, but hopefully it's not boring. Hopefully you'll find it interesting and somewhat helpful. I thought this was just a fun kind of way to take a look at eyeshadow palettes from a different perspective, because again, we do so often just look at the price tag, look at the packaging, and try to make up our minds about whether or not something is worth it. And ultimately, worth it is gonna come down to your personal preferences, what you need in your collection, what you like to use, how you use your makeup. So it may totally, completely make sense for you to buy a palette that has less product and that costs more money because it's something you absolutely love, or the formula is super unique or special and high-end. But if you're purely just looking for value, if you don't own a lot of makeup or you don't want to own a lot of makeup and you want to just have a nice curated collection that's gonna last you a while, hopefully this gave you some helpful information to pinpoint the palettes you might want to check out. If you guys enjoyed this video and got something out of it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I always appreciate your support so much. And definitely leave a comment down below. What was the thing from this video that shocked you most or that you were most surprised to hear? On that note, I am sure I have taken up way too much of your time. You guys are probably getting hungry. I know I'm getting hungry. I need to cook dinner. It's probably the hormones. I don't know. Either way, I'm gonna let you guys go, but I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.